And we're back on the Northland Sports Page. Hour number 2 about to begin. It is going to be a great one. We are filled with guests, starting with Erik Muiter of the Minnesota Timberwolves, also the Minnesota Gophers. We'll tell you more about him in just a moment. He'll be followed by Gianna Kneepkens from the University of Utah. We have to say that now, but Most of us know her as former Duluth Marshall Hilltopper, and she'll have a lot to say about the world of women's basketball right now, and that world is ever growing. And then Vencie Glenn, of course, on the NFL Draft to close the show, but a lot of eyes will be on the Timberwolves playoff game today. Game 1 with Phoenix will be this afternoon. Radio's not a visual medium, but I'm sporting a Timberwolves quarter zip.
You are.
Everybody's very hopeful for this series, but it's going to be probably pretty physical, and the Wolves will have to hopefully be the stronger team.
Yeah, everybody, we hear over and over again how this is the worst possible matchup for the Timberwolves. And the Timberwolves are so varied in their defensive players. Like, we actually have somebody that can guard KD. Like, he's going to have to guard like crazy, but, I mean, KD's not all-time Hall of Famer, top 10 kind of player of all time. But McDaniels, he's not a slouch on defense. Like, he can tame that. So it's what the rest of the team does.
We'll find out what kind of condition these Timberwolves are in. We're joined by Erik Muiter. Erik, your official title is Sports Performance Specialist. First of all, good morning, and thank you for being with us. But I want to start right there. A lot of people say strength and conditioning coach and just kind of leave it at that. Tell me what goes into the title that is Sports Performance Specialist. What is it beyond strength and conditioning? And again, good morning. So happy you're with us.
Well, thank you guys for having me. I'm glad to be here. Strength and conditioning, obviously, that's a relatively well-known term within the sports industry, the sports field. However, kind of old school, if we may say. It's kind of made the transition to sport or athletic performance based. Strength and conditioning kind of carries the undertone of, okay, are these guys strong and do they have endurance? Which, don't get me wrong, are absolutely important in the field of sports and competitive sports, especially when the sport is physical and with contact. But that being said, there's so much more that goes into it beyond strength and conditioning, such as building up explosiveness, building resiliency to injury, which is probably the most important thing, because at the end of the day, we've all heard the saying, the best ability is availability.
Yes.
And it absolutely is true. It's 100% true. So making sure these guys are resilient, making sure our guys are stable and balanced, while also being strong and endured, of course. It's all throughout within the term of sport and performance, making sure that all aspects of their performance are taken care of.
How about that, Dave Cook? Because it's the first time talking to Erik Muiter for both of us, and he's already using lines that we use on this show a lot. The best ability is availability. We've harped on that how many times?
Right. The best ability is Avela and Dura.
Yes.
But the thing, Erik, first of all, thanks for joining us. I was reading an article the other day in The Athletic about players and how they are bringing in additional folks to help their performance. And one of the things I was reading about are some new ideas about training neuropathy in the brain, training the ability to take on more than one thing at once. And I'm wondering, in your field, are you starting to include more, I don't know what you might call it, cutting edge ideas on performance?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Especially at the professional level, we listen to and we study and do research on everything that could give us a shred of improved performance. And what you mentioned, neurocognitive improvement, our ability for players, especially in a sport as fast and as physical as NBA basketball, our guys, they have to, throughout the game, while they're on the court, it's primarily something that I've come to realize and learn. It's primarily based on, cutting. We can't, research has shown from what I've collected that it can't really improve reflexes, reflex speed. But that being said, something that we can do, we can improve on, is being able to not focus on any external stimuli, or get rid of distractors, not focus on distractors, if you will. So our focus is dead set on what we are trying to do, and that's something that an improved or an enhanced neurocognitive ability can definitely do. And to ultimately answer your question, Dave, anything that can improve performance, that could possibly improve performance at the professional level where, hell, money is it's a thing, but it's not a thing. When you're a NBA or NFL or Major League Baseball or NHL organization, when you have the availability of those resources, believe me, they are all looked into, and every aspect that can help improve our performance is always being considered.
Erik, what I like about what you said is a lot of it is based on the term performance, and it's not necessarily specific to a sport. Now, I mentioned that you're with the Minnesota Timberwolves, but also with the Minnesota Gophers. I got familiar with you thanks to my niece being on Gopher dance team because you've done a lot of work with them as well. I want to talk a little bit about how you adjust to different teams, different athletes as to what they need. And then talk to me a little bit about, is there any crossover? Because you don't think of basketball players as dancers per se, but footwork's important. Do you do a lot of the same things with different sport athletes?
Honestly, you just said it. I think the term, and we've all heard, sport specific workouts within this industry, and workout has to be strictly specific to collegiate dance or cheer, or it has to be strictly specific to basketball. I think, in my opinion, sport specific is a very overrated ideology. At the end of the day, when the off season begins, almost regardless of the sport, the first thing we have to do is build up the foundation of the individual. And so we have to build up our muscles' ability to endure long bouts of either resistance or cardio-based activity. Maybe some of our individuals need to put on more size, so there's a hypertrophy or muscle building aspect to this foundational phase. That's one. And really, workouts that I've put some of our cheerleaders and dancers through, a volleyball individual could do the exact same workouts and be totally fine. Same thing with a basketball player. A football player could do very similar workouts. And then within the next phase, we're trying to, once our body is able to lift and exude such loads and such force, if you will, then we can, at that point, add some meat, if you will. We can really add some load to the bar. We can really kind of get past the foundation and really build the structure of the house, if you will. That's where we can build strength. We can start an introduction to power. And maybe at this point, as we're really into the off season, maybe about halfway through, then we can start making the workouts a little more sport specific. And then come our preseason, that is when we can really be a little more sports specific based off of what not just the team needs, not just the requirements of the sport, but the requirements of the individual. And that's another thing in regards to sport performance at this level. We're not, every person is an individual, and every individual has different needs. Therefore, what may be beneficial to one person may not be as beneficial to another, based off of what their particular roles are within the team, if that makes sense. So once we kind of hit that more sport-specific phase, at this point we want to ensure, especially if it's a long season, that we have really peaked at the right time, if you will. Now, for collegiate cheer and dance, it's, I look at that as almost like the Olympics, in that the middle of January, we have our nationals. So it's just basically just 1 or 2 weeks out of the year where we have to be at the absolute peak of performance. And it's that time leading up to that, while also monitoring athlete workload, that our workouts get really actually sport specific. But that's only for about a month. At least that's the way I do it. But then at the professional sport level, in this case at the NBA level, getting them to as close to peak performance as they can while helping them maintain strength, power, explosivity, rate of force production, while also enforcing their resiliency and their ability to resist injury throughout the means of the course of an 82-game season, if that makes sense. So, ultimately, to answer your question, how you can relate both, in this case, dance or cheer and basketball, it's very similar, especially as we lead up to the peak, the prime of the season. And there are a multitude of ways in which both workouts are very similar, very different. Or I beg your pardon, very similar and the same in a number of ways.
So to piggyback off that, we just got done with winter sports season here at the prep level, and I attended a bunch of banquets where every coach seemingly to end it said, during the off season, get in the weight room so we can be different next year. Get in the weight room is a cliche. What exactly does that mean? And I know you're probably going to tell me it means different things for each individual, but how do you tell somebody where to start? Because everybody's going to hear from a coach, hit the weight room. How do you begin that process?
Well, this is where it's on the coach. The coach has to first and foremost know the athlete, know the individual. And for me, that starts with athlete testing. Now, immediately after this season, there should be, obviously the athletes should get a break, let them rest, let them recover. Okay, yeah, this season was long, it was arduous, what a process the in-season can be. But beyond that, it's, okay, what is the baseline for the athlete? What does the athlete really need to improve on? Again, some athletes may have to start at X, some may have to start at Z. And that's on the coach based off of athlete testing or performance within the season to really go from there. And like you said, just hit the weight room is a very cliche way of putting it. There's so many more aspects to sport performance than simply hitting the weight room, and especially at the high school level where so many high school athletes, if they make the jump to college, they make that jump not knowing what true, legit sports performance training really is, because maybe they're just used to the weight room. And it's really getting beyond the scope of the weight room. Okay, hitting, say, let's take the sport of football, hitting the field. We got to work on acceleration, deceleration, change of direction, agility, top end speed, plyometrics, everything that can be done beyond the weight room.
Right.
So ultimately, you are 100% right in that regard. Hitting the weight room hit the weight room truly is a cliche with that. It's so much more than that. But as I said, it truly is on the coach and the coach's ability to know his or her athletes and where they need the most help throughout the course of an offseason.
So you talk about coaches knowing their athletes. What about an athlete or even just an individual wanting to get in better shape, knowing themselves? Obviously, at the NBA level, Erik, we hear about load management and players don't play certain nights. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole because it's just not a fun topic. But listening to your body and knowing that as you're working some new muscles and trying to strengthen them, there's going to be pain. Some people say, well, is that good pain or is that bad pain? How do you find the balance between we need to back off or this is part of the pushing process, if you will? Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. And that's where a sport performance coach is involved in all aspects of the athlete's day-to-day, not just what goes on in the weight room or the field in terms of the previously mentioned factors such as speed, agility, and et cetera, but practice as well. Okay, and this is where valid and complete communication with the head coach and his staff, with the athletic training staff, the sports medicine staff. This is where complete communication within the entire staff comes into play. Okay, so this particular day, our practice is going to be so-and-so intense because we have so-and-so many games or so-and-so many days before our next game. So we can afford to be intense about it. Okay, so if we're going to be this intense, therefore our in-season workout for that same day will be this amount of intensity, again, to ensure that the athlete is not overworked. Then as we get closer, maybe workouts, from a mechanical, from an endurance standpoint, really might rev up a little bit as we can get a little more sports specific with workouts and conditioning. However, the intensity of practice might dial down a little bit as we get closer to the day of a game. And then obviously the day before the game or the day of the game, we might have just a simple shoot around in terms of a sports specific type of activity. And, Load management, that's probably the one thing that I've gained the most knowledge on since I moved to Minnesota and since I got here. Our bodies, the human body is truly a wonderful machine. From the skin all the way down to the cellular level. Our ability to move, our ability to fight illness and disease, our ability to grow hair. It truly is a remarkable thing. But like all machines can break down. An engine can overheat. A laptop, if you're using it too long, can overheat. You need to let it cool off for a little, maybe take a little break. Athletes are the same way. Human beings are the same exact way. Like, just because an athlete may be an Olympic runner doesn't mean they don't need some rest and refueling and recovery. So that being said, load management, particularly through the course of an 82-game season, not to mention playoffs and preseason, is extremely valuable. And hell, when we talk about University of Minnesota dance, as we got up to nationals, the amount of practice they had really intensified. They were practicing sometimes 4, 5, 6 total hours a day.
Right.
Therefore, workouts, we have to compensate. We have to ensure that workouts are less intense, because at the end of the day, if they go too hard, if they overuse something and they injure themselves, well, then we have a big problem, especially with the most important time of the year upon us.
Speaking of that most important time of the year, we're there for the Timberwolves. We're talking with Erik Muiter, sports performance specialist for the Wolves and also for the Gophers. I just want to close with this on a lighter, less physically intense note. This has been the best Wolf season, arguably in 20 years. What's the vibe been like just to be around a team that's been so successful and hopefully looking for a lot more starting today?
It's been fantastic since day one. Nothing but smiles since day one. Even after, one of the things I've taken away from the most is even after a loss, the ability for these guys to just, okay, all right, next day, we got work to do. We have a lot more games. We know this is a special team, so we have to just focus on the very next game, no matter who it is, no matter how much last night's loss may have stunk. The vibes have been good truly from day one. And this week leading up to our game today, which will tip off in a few hours, it's been fantastic. Very serious. Attitude has been nothing but serious the entire week, both from the staff and from the players. But overall, the mentality of the team has been wonderful.
We absolutely love to hear that. Erik, this has been wonderful as well. I hope we get to do this again. Erik Muiter of the Timberwolves and the Gophers. Sports performance specialist, I'll tell you this, you could be a radio performance specialist as well, because this was pretty darn good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Have a great rest of your day.
You as well. Go Wolves. Hey, that was fun, but I also feel like now I need to get in much better shape.
That's exactly correct, Brian.
I'm in shape because round is a shape. Speaking of round, we're going to talk more round ball basketball with Gianna Kneepkens. She's next. Stick around. We'll be right back. Back on the Northland Sports page, thanks so much to Erik Muiter for kicking off hour number 2 in a big way, but we are just getting started here with the second hour. 2 more guests still to come. Gianna Kneepkens is waiting for us here just around the corner. And then, of course, Vencie Glenn to talk a little bit about what the Vikings will or won't do in the NFL draft next week. But Dave, as it's Brian Prudhomme, Dave Cook, most of our last couple of shows, and it's about to be again, has been about the emergence of women's basketball. And I think as far as covering it, we're probably late because you and I know it emerged a long time ago. It's just kind of hitting the proverbial casuals now.
Oh, it really is. And the special, we talked about this with CJ Shoot about a month and a half ago, about how in hockey we follow our kids because we've focused on them since they were kids, right? So we know what kid graduated from St. Cloud Cathedral and is now playing for the, whomever, because we pay attention. Well, women's basketball is exactly like that, except we don't pay enough attention. We have players.
That's about to change.
Yeah, it truly is. And it started up here, really started with our next guest.
I was going to say, you mentioned CJ Osuchukwu, maybe the young lady he might be proudest of, joins us now. He calls her Killer G. Gianna Kneepkens, good morning, and thank you for being here.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely our pleasure. How are things out in Utah? I know it's early for you. We appreciate you taking the time to wake up with us this morning.
Oh, yeah, no problem. It's good out here. Weather's great. just finishing up finals. But no, it's great out here.
That's when you know somebody's left Duluth, when they start by telling you how much better the weather is where they go, right, Dave?
Well, and she knows it. She just knows. She doesn't even know what the weather's like here. She's just like, it's better out here.
It's got to be better than what you have, no question about it. Speaking of what you have, you've got a heck of a squad there with the Utah Utes. Just had a teammate of yours join the Minnesota Lynx. We'll talk about Miss Peely in a moment. But tell me a little bit about Utah basketball. This past season, they were part of the NCAA tournament. Obviously, you weren't able to be part of it. You're on the road to recovery and big seasons ahead. But the Utes, a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, we had a pretty good season. I think we are our third time in a row going to the NCAA tournament. We lost in the second round, but no, 10-loss season, but we won over 20 games. So that's always the big milestone. But we have a big group coming back returning from last year. We lose a couple of big pieces, like you mentioned, Alyssa Peely, but we're ready to fill that spot and then kind of just make up for that. But no, next year should also be a lot of fun, and we should be really good next year too.
Well, you talk about returning pieces. You, of course, hope to be one of those. You've got a good example of another Minnesota kid that came back hard from an injury. Paige Beckers did that. Do you take anything motivationally from that, or you just try to be your own person? And what kind of goals do you have for yourself next season?
I mean, yeah, I think just anytime there's a lot of examples of season-ending injuries happen to a lot of people. So just kind of seeing others and seeing how, if you work hard, you do what you're supposed to do all the right things. It's very possible to, come back and be as good as you were, if not better, as you see in Paige. Like, she's better than she was after she got hurt. And I think right now, for next year, my goal is just to be better than I was last year. And I know it's going to be a lot of hard work, and it already has been pretty hard, just sitting out watching and rehab every day, but it's going to be worth it in the end. So just focusing on, like I said, doing the right thing. So the transition from not being able to play to playing is a lot smoother so just as smooth as it can be.
Absolutely. We are chatting with Gianna Kneepkens, former Hilltopper turned Ute. She plans to be a star, was a star, certainly up in Duluth, on her way at Utah. Injury derailed it a little bit. But, Dave, I got to say, based on that last answer, the mindset is right for Gianna Kneepkens.
That's exactly correct, Brian, because one of the questions I have for Gianna is, Gianna, you've been the focal point of a basketball team with expectations since you were an eighth grader. This is kind of your first year to sit back and watch the game. So what have you learned on your time sitting on the injured list, paying attention to the game, maybe from a different point of view?
Yeah, I think, I've learned so much, but it's hard to pinpoint just one thing. But I'd say in general, I'd say just IQ has improved a ton, and I just see my teammates playing from a different point of view, and I feel like I understand them a lot more. Because if I'm playing with them, sometimes there's just so much going on that you're why did they do this? Or just seeing what they're good at is a lot easier, because I'm just sitting back and watching them. It's not like I'm worrying about what I'm doing. So I think that's going to be the biggest thing, is just I feel like I understand my teammates a lot more. And just overall my IQ has improved a lot, which is always helpful. When you can't improve your physical game, your mental game is just as important. So
it is. Sometimes, in fact, it's even more important, because we've watched teams with good basketball IQs sometimes defeat teams that can be physically more talented. I want to piggyback on what Dave just asked you, Gianna, about watching the game from a different perspective. I want to go to the Final Four. It was, one for the ages. South Carolina with the perfect season. Caitlin Clark doing what she does. Paige and UConn being back in the fold. And then NC State, quite frankly, kind of being the forgotten team that, by the way, was in the Final Four for each gender. But I had Chad Greenway on the show last week, and I asked him about how Madden, who you have obviously a memorable history with, how she watched it. Did she watch it differently because she's so involved at a high level? What about somebody who's a D1 opponent of these people playing in these games? Do you get caught up in the Caitlin Clark hype? Do you get really into the game itself? Or do you watch it from, like you said, that basketball IQ perspective, and you're watching what kind of sets they're running, what kind of rotations they're doing? What's it like for you to watch, this well-viewed national championship, being that you're well into the game as well?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think a little bit of all of it, kind of. Like, I mean, like you mentioned, Caitlin Clark, I really respect her game, just how well she plays and, like, how confident she's out there. So I think I watch it from, like, just enjoying basketball perspective just because it's such high-level basketball, but also definitely moments where I'm like, this is what I would have done there, or things like that. So kind of also putting my my shoes in the game, just because obviously that's the goal someday, is to play in that position. And so I think enjoying it and also just kind of putting myself in that position, because hopefully one day I can play in games like that. So
we will certainly be rooting for you. The biggest question that a lot of people are asking is, how will Caitlin Clark's game transfer from what she did at Iowa to playing in the WNBA? We'll find out soon enough, but I want to go a different direction, because we already talked a little bit about Alyssa Peely and, her great career at Utah, and now us Minnesotans are going to be able to see it firsthand when she joins the Lynx. You were a teammate of hers. Tell us a little bit about what the Minnesota Lynx and Minnesota fans are getting with Miss Peely's joining the Minnesota Lynx.
Yeah, I love Alyssa. She's awesome. She is very, I think what people say about her, she's intimidating, but once you get to meet her, she's just awesome, and she's super chill and down to earth. So she's a great person, and I think that's important for a team to be getting, because, I don't know, nobody wants to be dealing with someone that causes problems, but Alyssa is just super chill and awesome. But basketball-wise, again, I think they're getting probably one of the most unique girls that were in the draft. Like, she's super strong, but she can pull you out, attack you from the perimeter, and then she'll also post you up, and you can't really get around her because she's so strong. And then obviously she can shoot, so she can just kind of play all over the place. But no, she's definitely a very special player, and I'm so grateful I got to play with her.
I do like that scouting report, Dave, because the size was obvious. You see the photos, and there are some decent, sizable reporters that are getting dwarfed by the height and strength that Alyssa Peely is going to bring. But you hear from Gianna that she can shoot a little bit. That's dynamite.
Well, and in Gianna's game, telling somebody they can shoot a little bit is quite the compliment too, right?
Right.
So, Gianna, what do you need to do to get to this level? Like, you're not just a tag-along teammate. You're a person that drives the bus. So what are those next steps you have to take?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just continuing to get in the gym and get stronger. That level, the WNBA is a different level of physicality, so just that. And then just also working on continuing to be a great scorer and shooter, and then always working on defense. So just, I think the biggest thing is just continuing to work. You can't kind of just plateau where you're at. So, yeah.
That's well said by Gianna Kneepkens, former Duluth Marshall star, now University of Utah star. Gianna, Dave was just asking you a question about your future, looking forward. I want to look back a little bit, because Duluth Marshall basketball has continued to be very good with Regan, with Chloe, with CJ Osuchukwu still at the helm. You've still played a part in helping develop some of the talents here in Duluth. Tell us a little bit about how often you get back here and stay in touch with your Marshall teammates and impact some of those younger players that, pardon the phrase, want to be the next Gianna Kneepkens.
Yeah, so obviously it's a little bit hard to get back there, just because we're super busy and we have stuff during the summer, and then obviously we're in season. But I'll get home usually in the winter for like Christmas break for like 5 days, and then at the beginning of summer, and then at the end of summer for like 2 weeks. But this summer it's going to be a little different just because I have to focus on my recovery, and we just have more resources out here. But when I get back home, I'm in the gym and I work out with Chloe a lot, pretty much every day when I'm back home. So she's a great player, and I'm super excited to see what the future holds for her. But no, yeah, I think whenever I can get back and work out with some of my old teammates or whatever, I think it's a lot of fun. So.
What do you tell somebody like Chloe, who is getting a lot of attention for good reason? You just mentioned she's an incredible player, and that's an understatement. Watching her play live is really a sight to behold, but she's a kid. She's not even of high school age technically yet. Have you helped kind of keep her within herself? Because she's getting a lot of attention with a lot of years left still in a Toppers uniform too.
Yeah, I think she actually has a really great mindset, from what I'm aware of. Like, she just knows all the right things. But if I had advice for her, I'd just be like, play basketball. You're good for what you do. You don't need to change anything who you are or anything. So just basically just hoop, because at the end of the day, that's why she's good, is because she plays how she plays. So I always think that's the most important thing. And also just remembering to have fun. Like, I think sometimes if you lose the fun in it, it's not worth it anymore. So I think that's always super important as well.
I'm glad you brought up the fun in it, because a lot of people are playing basketball year round, and to get, as good as you want to be, sometimes that's what it takes. But there's a lot of debate as to whether AAU is the right way to go, or, play multiple sports in high school, what have you. What did AAU do for you, and what route would you advise people take if they want to get to your level?
Yeah, I actually really loved my time on AAU. I played with Minnesota Fury. I just met different girls as different level of competition. So, I would always advise someone and suggest to do AAU. But I did also, until my senior year, I did play soccer. So I didn't take soccer as intense, but so a combo of both. But if you really love basketball, then I guess we're seeing that a little bit more, where people are just solely playing one sport. But no, I liked doing something else, just kind of was something fun I got to do to keep my mind off basketball. So I would suggest AU, and then if you have time for another sport, I think it's always a fun addition to do, to have other friends as well too.
I absolutely can appreciate that. I'm Brian Prudhomme. He's Dave Cook. We're chatting with Gianna Kneepkens, former Duluth Marshall star, now a star at the University of Utah. Gianna, I want to talk a little bit about how Dave and I started this segment, and we talked about, hey, we've enjoyed women's basketball, girls basketball for a long time. Seems like a lot more people are kind of late to the party, but the important thing is they're there. How much appreciation do you have for how this sport has suddenly blown up in the mind of just about everybody?
Oh, yeah, it's extremely awesome. Just even the growth and the amount of people that have come to our games, and then obviously you're seeing the viewership in the national championship and the Final Four. It's crazy, and it's so fun. It's such a fun environment, because the fans that they're diehard and they go hard. So it's been a lot of fun to be kind of within the emergence of women's basketball.
Now, I do have a question for you that might be difficult, and if you want to plead the fifth, I understand. But here's a concern that I had. I love the fact that people are following Caitlin Clark to the level that they are, and people are still talking about, good luck getting a ticket to an Indiana Fever game now, and that's great. Women's basketball deserves this attention. My fear is that when Caitlin Clark goes to the WNBA, so goes all these fans that were watching college this past year. I'm concerned for people like Paige and you and the stalwarts that are still in the college game. Do you think this year's tournament did enough to keep people there, or are you afraid they're just going to go where Caitlin goes? Because I am a little bit, even though it wouldn't be fair to all of you great players at the college level.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's hard to fully know, but I think there are a lot of other stars that people are bought into, like UConn selling out crowds, and
yeah,
I think there's a lot of stars that people do want to see. Maybe it won't get as much, and maybe a little bit more has to be built up, but I feel like next year the media will do a good job of covering all the other people that people want to see. So I guess that's a good question, and I don't fully, that's my view of it.
I like your take on it. You mentioned UConn. They kind of are the gold standard. A bucket list item for me would be to see a game in Storrs, Connecticut at some point. I want to close with this. It's a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek type question, but at the Division I level, you get a chance to go to a lot of great venues. I know you love your home arena. Everybody does. But what's the coolest road trip that you've taken? What's a spot that you visited that I know you're there to play a game, but you're a little bit wide-eyed at where you're actually playing?
Oh, dang, that's a good question. There's a lot of places that, I like playing at the Huntsman, which is our place. I like going places that have good crowds because it's just fun to play in a loud environment. So, Arizona gets a good crowd. It was fun to play in Vegas our last 2 years because that's where the Aces play.
Right.
So my sophomore and freshman year was at Michelob Ultra Arena, which is fun to just play in. And then my team headed out and they played where the Connecticut Sun plays this year. I didn't get to make it because I was in surgery, but I feel like that would have been a pretty cool place. But no, basketball has given me so many opportunities and places to go that have been unreal that I just can't even. It's just, I'm so grateful for it. But
It's hard to put it all into words, but you did a great job, Gianna. I really appreciate the conversation. I think we need a Duluth Day at the University of Utah next season so we can all get there and go crazy and welcome you back on the floor. This was fun. I hope we get to talk again. Have yourself a good rest of your weekend, and thank you again for doing this with us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. That is Gianna Kneepkens, one of our local heroes, helped put Duluth Marshall and Duluth girls basketball in general on the map.
Yeah, and it's on the map, hopefully, to stay. We've got the coaching, we've got the players, we've got all that stuff. It's time to be Duluth's a hockey town, but it's also a women's basketball town.
I was going to say, it can be just about every sport. It's a matter of the fans letting it be that way, and Gianna did some great work. We bump her out with little Foo Fighters because there goes our hero, Gianna Kneepkens. Coming up next, Vencie Glenn closes the show as he always does. Draft talk to end it. We'll be right back. Well, this guy's a great friend of ours. It's time for Drawing Lines. We're doing the safety dance here on the Northland Sports page. Brian Prudhomme, Dave Cook. Drawing Lines comes to you from Arola Architecture Studio. It features Vencie Glenn once again this week. We feature great sponsors each and every week, Dave Cook.
Absolutely. Let's start with Hoops Brewing. Mike Regan at Christensen Group Insurance. The Blackwoods Group, including their locations on London Road, Blackwater downtown, Tavern on the Hill, the locations in Proctor and in Two Harbors. Mount Royal Bottle Shop, Stewart's Bike Sports and Trophies, Comfort Systems of Duluth, Kohler Toyota and Kohler Hyundai, Advantage Emblem and Screen Printing, and Kraus Heating and Cooling, your Carrier HVAC authorized dealer, and of course, Brian, the OG, Arola Architecture Studio.
We'd be nowhere without him. Drawing Lines is his segment. Vencie Glenn is our guy. Vencie, good morning once again, my friend.
Good morning, guys. How are you?
Always better when we talk to you. It's been a great hour number 2, but as I've told you, you're always our closer, and we expect nothing but the best from the last guy once again. Speaking of last, this is the last show before the draft. Take us back, if you can, to the year that you were drafted and the days leading up to it. What's your mindset? Now, I know it's different all those years ago versus now. You know, the media's hyped into a different event, but are you watching everything with, bated breath and tracking everything, or are you going about life going, hey, I hope my phone rings?
It was totally different back in '86. That was the year Bo Jackson came out as well. So media was great for him, but for everybody else, they didn't even really show or talk about the second round. You had the first maybe 15 picks, and after that, man, everybody else was just at home waiting on the call. But the leading up to it, I was, coming from a small school, being the first one to play in the blue-gray game in the Senior Bowl. And the Senior Bowl is a game that really just took me to a whole new level against Bo Jackson, and then really played well. John Offerdahl was my teammate, and he won Defensive Player of the Game, MVP for our side. And I would have won it if he didn't get the interception that he stole from me. But I had a great Senior Bowl, and they were talking about maybe third round or something like that. And just for me, from where I knew I had come from, just being drafted was just an honor. Just to have the opportunity to play, was an honor. So it wasn't like we were walking around hyped like we were the man and everything. We were just hoping somebody called. And it was me, my agent, and another defensive back out of South Alabama, Lewis Billups, who everybody knows had controversy throughout his career. Mm-hmm. And we were sitting together in Indianapolis. And Lewis got drafted like 40-something in the second round, and I went 54. And I'll never forget the call. And it was the New England Patriots. They called, and they said, hey, we're going to get you. We're going to take you on our next pick. And so they put the head coach on, Ray Berry and stuff, and my agent talked to Sullivan. Sullivan's, can't think of the GM's name, though. And that's how it happened. And then I went home and knew that I was getting drafted, and I just got ready to play football, and just let my agent handle the money part of it, and I just always stayed focused on the football part of my career.
Vencie, you just derailed my whole train of thought when you said that you played with probably my favorite football player ever, and that's Bo Jackson. What's it like on the field with him? I mean, was he – how do I say this? So as a fan, right, because of not ever been on a field with a guy like that, is it, oh, there's Bo, or is it just, hey, we're playing a football game and, yep, that guy over there carries the ball?
So let me tell you my Bo Jackson experience. So – his name is Vincent Jackson, Vincent Jackson. So we're in the hotel at the Senior Bowl. You got to remember, we're in Alabama. He's large in Alabama.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
He's large in Alabama. So I see him, and so we had the Denver Broncos coaches, and they had the Tampa Bay Buccaneers coaches, and that's why he chose to play baseball, because he wouldn't want to play for Tampa. He knew they had the first pick. And so I'd see him in the hallway. His room was right across the hall from mine, where we stayed and stuff. So I'd glance at him, and I'm just looking at this specimen of a man, just like, I've watched this guy for 4 years do what he do. And I'm just in awe, right? So I never saw him in practice or nothing like that, anything. And we're at the game day, and both teams lined up on the sideline. Everybody gets introduced. And everybody's looking like, where's Bo? Bo ain't out here. Whoa, he ain't playing. I'm happy. He ain't playing, y'all. He ain't playing. And so all of a sudden we sitting there right before the national anthem, all of a sudden this helicopter hovers, and just drops down in the middle of the field. And guess who steps out the helicopter?
Holy cow.
Oh, Mr. Jackson. And he was the greatest, and till this day, as I say, the greatest football specimen I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting here from one AA school, and here he is lining up the first play of the game. And they run a patented toss sweep to the right to both. And I'm just at free safety, and I just see it. And I'm like, well, it's going to open up. He going to hit it. I've seen it a million times, and he going to be going down this sideline. And I said, this your first, maybe only chance. And he hit it, and he cut up, and I hit him, bam, smack, took him down one-on-one, just me and both, for about 7-yard gain. And I was like, y'all in trouble now. I can play. I can play. I just tackled Bo Jackson in the open field. If I can tackle him, I got a chance. And I just went on, and it built a lot of confidence for me.
The Monday Night Football game, when the Boz tried to fill that hole, you had to have said, come on, man. I did that when I was a college student. You got your butt run over.
Yeah. You just don't know until you know with him. And that was like my welcome to the NFL was with Earl Campbell. It was my rookie year. We were in New England. It was preseason, and he had just got traded to New Orleans from Houston with Bum Phillips. And so I'm on twos, and he had just got traded there. So he's playing, and so I'm playing against the starter, because I only played like 4 plays. And here comes Earl Campbell. Now I done watched this guy for umpteen years, and all of a sudden they do another toss sweep, and I'm thinking Bo Jackson action. I got it. He goes left, he cuts up, and it's just me and Big Earl. And I hit Earl. Earl hit me. I hit the ground. Earl was still running. I looked up, and I thought I had just ran into a wall. And so at the end of the series, I go to the sideline, and I'm shaking my head. I'm in disgust. And I'll never forget, Fred Marion came over to me, the all-pro safety for the Patriots. He goes, "Rook, what's wrong?" I said, "Fred, if this is the pros, I ain't going to make it." I'm like, if that's what I got to do every week, I ain't going to make it. And after that game, God is my witness, Bo Jackson retired. He didn't play that season. He retired.
Vencie, those are back-to-back great stories, and that's why we love talking football with you, and I want to go off of that, because one of the things that you've said repeatedly about this show is you enjoy it because we talk football, and to quote you, we don't talk fan ball. Is that your big problem with the draft? Because for a long time it was mine. Because come Thursday, players are going to be picked, and there's going to be quote-unquote experts that are immediately going to say, this guy's going to be amazing, and this guy's going to be nothing. And I'm going to sit there and go, how do we know? Because of the way he walked on the stage, that's all he's done. The draft is a great event for the league, but it's pure fan ball, isn't it?
Absolutely. And the reason why I know that a lot of guys aren't what they say they are, because I got a lot of friends that are scouts, coaches, and stuff in the league that I play with that I respect so much. And when they say a guy ain't this and a guy ain't doing this and this kind of character he has and all that, that tells me everything I already need to know. So I'm not going off what fans say. I just want to know, can you play on Sunday?
Yeah.
You know, everybody looks good. Everybody has stats. I always say that to people. Everybody has a stat. Even the last guy on the bench of an NBA team who never plays, he has a stat. So what are stats? Everybody got them. I just want to know, can you play on Sunday?
So that is a great lead into what I've been wanting to ask you all week, Vencie. I heard on the radio the other day that it wasn't O'Connell, but it was another coach someplace, and he said that he's drafting traits because he can fix problems when it came to quarterbacks. And I heard that, and I said, I wonder what Vencie thinks about the idea that you can bring in a kid with talent and fix the mistakes that he already makes. Is that something that's possible, or is that wishful thinking?
No, I believe that's possible. I believe it's possible because I'll give you a real quick prime example. When I got to Minnesota, and I knew I had great range on the ball and all that kind of stuff, and we were sitting there in practice one day, and Willie Shaw, the defensive back coach, who I think is the guru of defensive back coaches in the world. I love Willie Shaw. He's my guru. And he used to say, 2-5, put some money in the bank. I said, what? He called me back in the back of because he always stood behind the DBs, and he called me back after a play, and somebody else went in for him. He said, look at me. I've been doing this a lot longer than you. More players make coaches than coaches make players. You got to put some money in the bank. I know in San Diego they had you at 10, 11 yards, all up in it. We don't need you up here. I need you back here. He says, because when they go get past you, you know what happens? I said, what? He raises his hand up, goes touchdown, and now you got to come explain to me. And that hit home like never before. And that's when I just started lining up at 14, 15. Now I got range. I got the whole field in front of me. My angles changed, and jumping on the ball was just so much more natural to me. So, yes, I do believe there are coaches that can bring the best out in players, but if they're willing to learn. But you have to put the time in and make it happen.
Vencie, talk about putting the time in and making it happen. You do it every week for us. Next week should be fun. We're going to want draft aftermath conversation with you next Saturday.
Right.
Let's do it then. We appreciate it always, and we'll talk again very, very soon.
And I promise you guys, I'll study and watch the draft this week, so I have some knowledge about what's going on. I never normally watch it, but I'll watch it for you guys.
You and I are in the same boat. I'm going to be doing the same thing. Have a great weekend, 2-5.
Okay. You too.
Vencie.
That's our guy, Vencie Glenn. What a show. Thank you, Erik Muiter. Thank you, Gianna Kneepkens. Thank you, Nina Fredrickson. Thank you, Vencie Glenn. Thank you, Northland. Have a good weekend. We'll see you.